That's true. That's true. Although there was a dinner scene.
I don't know if I can be
right,
with.
there was a dinner scene.
I don't think I can be in a group with someone who doesn't like the Rocketeer.
Start chopping people off the channel, but it won't be me. I love that movie. Love that movie.
Well, you shouldn't say, Don, you don't like Blade Runner 2049. So
I don't.
You guys were hitting all the marks here.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I think it was only about atmosphere, although Blade Runner is all about
it is 135 minutes of establishing shots. That is Blade Runner 2049.
Okay.
Wasn't that also Blade
The
Runner?
best establishing shots in the world.
Hey guys, guess what?
Is just one
Wait, we're not talking about Blade Runner? Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, you should listen to Denis Villeneuve's commentary.
See, it took like 10 seconds for me to throw the rails right off. Look at that.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay. I'm going to do the Zach Morris timeout, all right? Because we are here not talking about Blade Runner 2049. We are here to talk about, did I say Black Widow 2049? No.
I hope
No,
so.
you said Blade Runner.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I'm totally confused. I've been up since 4. It's been a great Sunday.
Ooh, you gotta
Yeah.
sleep in, Chief. You know?
I slept in. So, okay, Black Widow
Look at that.
There it
is
is.
finally upon us. Now, David, you're holding up another comic book. Which one is this?
This is her second appearance.
Oh wow!
Oh,
look at that. Okay.
Well, I
She
can't even
dresses
see
so
that.
classy.
It's too small.
Such a nice outfit. She's got that little mink
The little
fur.
Yeah,
around her
yeah,
neck.
yeah. Look at that.
Oh, fun. All right.
Call up the costume designer and get a recount on that. Sorry, Janie Tamim.
Wow.
That's
All right.
the
So
costume designer. I'm just
here's what
name
we're
dropping
gonna do.
properly. Okay.
let me do this. All right. Let's just do this.
Why won't everyone just shut up?
Thank you. I gotta have that. I'm gonna put that as a scrolling Chiron at the bottom.
That's the question.
Instead of spoiler alert, is why don't everyone shut up?
Well, we are here to
Don.
all right.
okay.
We are here to talk about Black Widow, and given the reactions, the diverse reactions that I've seen, just kind of like, from the last Loki live stream that we did, some teasing opinions. This is before David and I saw the film. Mark, you saw it, I assume, since you're here, and Annie, you've seen it, I assume, since you're here. But I don't know what either of you think of this film. But we're going to get to that in a second, because we got to tell people who the hell we are. We are Earth's mightiest critics,
And
we're
Gleek.
here. And Gleek, and we're here to talk about Black Widow 2021. Now, I'm going to go around the virtual room here, but I'm going to start with our newest introduction, our newest member, Annie Banks of Chuckload of Comics. Tell us about Chuckload of Comics and a bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm currently studying marketing and journalism at a small liberal arts school outside of Chicago, Illinois. I love it. I love journalism. It's been a passion of mine since I picked up a pen. I have been in association with Chuckload of Comics for almost 2 years now. I am their head film critic, their head of press, their editor-in-chief, and I do a little bit of PR on the side for them. All my work can be found up there. If I'm not writing it, I'm editing it, I'm publishing it. I'm running live shows with them. Now that events are coming back in person, you can feel I'll be on the go and on the floors.
So what's the where can we find Chuckload of Comics? Is it chuckloadofcomics.com?
Yes, sir, it is. That is our domain. And then we are on YouTube at Chuckload of Comics.
Excellent.
Nice.
I'll drop links to all that down in the description after the live stream, so folks check that out for sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. This is going to be fun.
Pleasure, yeah.
I hope it'll be fun for you. As you can tell from this band of misfits, we get a little talky, but that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
And talking also, we have Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree back again. We have Don Shanahan of 25 Years Later. Every Movie Has a Lesson, and the Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast, which just yesterday, ahead of schedule, I might add, dropped their Black Widow episode. You and Will Johnson going at it. Now, I confess I have not listened because for two reasons.
No one else has either. Don't worry.
Listen, I am in the middle of writing my Black Widow review. I'm 1,000 words in, and I'm about halfway done.
That's heavy for you. Okay, okay.
Wow.
And also, I didn't want to spoil. I didn't want to like listen to someone have an argument or a discussion and talking points that I was going to engage in a few hours later. So after this, I will go and check it out. But everyone, it's a fantastic podcast, and Will Johnson, your co-host, is awesome, and hopefully he'll be joining us tonight in the chat. David Fowley of Keeping It Real. Yes, that's you, David. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
The person I saw Black Widow with the last time we were in a theater was for in that particular theater was for Tenet almost a year earlier.
Quiet Place Part 2.
Oh, is that the same? Yeah.
That
Thank
was
you.
awful.
Yeah, I think that's why I forgot.
Not the movie, the experience.
No, I'll spread the love to both the movie and the experience. Anyway, and then we have Mark, the movie man Krawcheck of the Spoiler Room. How you doing, Mark?
You got to lock your doors. You let anybody in here.
That's true, but no, no, it's always great to have you wonderful folks here talking movies and TV shows and whatever. So we're going to talk about this film, long delayed by COVID, long delayed for other reasons. This is an odd movie because, by the way, we're going to be talking spoilers. In fact, I'm just going to do this early because I don't know if you haven't seen Black Widow, please turn away now. But if you have seen it, we're going to talk about the entire thing.
Okay.
In about an hour. We're going to condense it.
Good luck.
We'll see how far we get with that. But all right, at the end of, or towards the end of Avengers Endgame, Natasha Romanoff sacrifices herself on this crazy distant planet in order to get the Soul Stone for the good guys and help stop Thanos. So she's dead, and she's apparently not just Marvel Comics dead, but DEAD dead. So now we have a brand new movie called Black Widow that's coming out 2 years later. People are asking, what's the deal with that? It's not exactly a prequel. It's not exactly an origin story. It's a prequel in the sense that it happens before Avengers Endgame, but it's also sort of a sequel to Captain America's Civil War. It's an odd movie that just kind of fits, will slot into the overall Marvel canon after this whole release hype has died down.
Yeah.
In other words, people can watch it in the future in any order that they want. Just like with Rogue One, a Star Wars story, you don't have to necessarily watch that after you've watched the original trilogy and the prequels and before Rise of Skywalker. You can just watch it before A New Hope. So it's a very oddly timed film. The reactions have been kind of divided among certain sectors of fandom, and there have been a lot of questions surrounding this movie as far as its necessity, its effectiveness. Ineffectiveness?
Ineffectiveness.
Yeah. So we're going to talk.
Nespresso. You make really fancy coffee. That's what you're doing.
You
George
think
Clooney says it's good.
Nespresso
How
is
bad can it
really
be?
fancy coffee?
I have no idea. I don't drink coffee.
Okay, well that's
sorry to
problem
hear.
number one.
Yeah, I know.
How do you not drink coffee?
I don't. Sorry,
Oh my,
guys.
wow.
High on life, I guess. Right.
Well, this is a movie about Russian spies, so maybe we have one in our midst because that is downright unpatriotic to not be a heavy coffee drinker, Don.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A hot tea.
Oh, there you go. Okay, we'll let you. We'll get okay.
Irish breakfast tea.
Oh,
no,
there
I
you go.
thought you were paying me a compliment by calling me a hottie.
Well,
Anyway,
slow down.
Wow.
I shall.
Okay.
All right, so do we want to synopsize this movie?
You just did.
You
Did
did,
I?
yeah.
Well, I gave
I gave
kind of. I
You can
gave
just
where it
repeat
slots
yourself
in.
again, but a little bit
Yeah,
slower.
yeah.
That's fine.
Hey, she's
Oh.
dead. If you wondered how she goes blonde, this is your movie.
Where's the green vest? She's got the vest too.
Yeah.
You wondered why she got the best. If you
Yeah.
wondered how
Now
she
you want to know
knew,
why she speaks Russian?
You want to know why she's called the Black Widow? This is not the movie for you. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good
if you
luck.
want to know how to break your nose the right way, this is your movie.
We
I
got it.
couldn't
See?
stop laughing at that scene.
I know,
I
man.
literally thought of the scene where Edward Norton kicks his own ass in Fight Club, like when she slams her head against the table, and I'm like, is she just gonna beat the crap out of it? What the hell is
If
going
you're
on?
gonna steal from the best.
Yeah.
It
Liar,
reminded
liar,
me of that-
bathroom scene.
I think it
Yeah,
reminded me
I
of
was
that
thinking
scene
that
from
too. Like,
Liar,
"Kick my
Liar.
ass, you right?"
I'm kicking my own ass.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one.
Love it. Yeah.
Okay, this is gonna be the signal.
Oh boy.
All right,
Just
so
for Don.
we're going to
Yeah, I
go
know.
into the comments because we do have some people
Oh.
engaging already.
Whoa.
And I should mention, if
Holy
you're
cow.
watching this live,
Mhm.
please jump into the comments. If you've seen the movie, let us know what you think. If you have any theories or questions that we can ask, especially about the comics continuity, because we have some experts here. I am certainly not one of them, as I found out reading comics for 20 years as a child and into adulthood did me no good because the lore somehow completely passed me by in a lot of these projects. But okay, so let's check out The Widow's Bite. Sam Carrico also back with us. The cold open with the family escaping was riveting. The Nirvana cover during the opening credits was catchy too. Not gonna lie.
Sweet ass cover. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I thought that was. Let's talk about that cold open for a second. It was kind of a fun misdirect. And again, we are talking spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie and don't want it ruined for you, turn back now and catch up later. But we catch up with the Romanoff quote unquote family in Ohio in 1995. And we see young Natasha and young Yelena. Yelena's 6, I think. And Natasha's probably 12 or, I think she's preteen. And they're just kind of hanging out with their, in their backyard and doing somersaults and stuff. I honestly thought this was going to be some kind of a weird, like a kidnapping story, like the folks from the Red Room are going to show up and like shove them into a white van and take them off to Russia. But no, it's way more complicated than that. We see the family, we see the kind of we've got to go montage. It very much reminded me of something like Steven Spielberg would have done back in the day. Sort of shades of E.T. It leads to this little airstrip where there's a chase and S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up and there's gunfire and they escape to Cuba with David Harbour on the wing. I don't know exactly when he got into the plane, but as we find out later, he's sort of the Russian Captain America. So maybe he just hung out there the whole time. It didn't really bother him. So he was, what was the name of his character again?
The Red Guardian.
The Red Guardian. I want to say the Red Menace, but that was just something different.
They make creams and lotions for that.
That was in Crystal Skull.
Yikes. Yes.
Well, let's talk about the Red Guardian a bit, because he considers himself a contemporary of Captain America. Did he have a version of the super soldier serum? Is he a mutant?
Yes.
What's his deal?
You would think the movie would tell you.
It gets spread a lot of places. It gets spread in like the Red Room. It gets spread in Captain America. I'm sorry, in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, it seems to be something that I don't know, down the road could be a thing with Marvel. Not sure, but yeah.
Well, no, he does mention there is one drop-off line where he mentions he's Russia's only super soldier. So he has gotten the serum, or was the only guy that survived the serum, because we've learned as well with Black Widow through the great montage. We actually get a credit sequence in this film. Holy wow, I'm old school, and I'm like, and they used the credit sequence to fill in some opening credit sequence is what I mean is we get an opening credit sequence and it fills in gaps, but you get to pick up that they did experiments and they were trying to do more than just mind control the Black Widows as well. I bet you anything they tried to do some super serum stuff with them as well, and they didn't survive. But Red Guardian is a super soldier. And yeah, so I mean that they drop off one line, but you're right. Otherwise, they don't really bring it to focus. But it is kind of implied that he's Captain America. I mean, when he lifts the very
like
heavy
trailer,
the farm trailer, when he lifts that up and just flips it, you're like, oh, okay, Russian super soldier. Okay, and as you said, Mike, it's been spread around. Tony Stark has got to have, or his dad has to have the worst security known to man, because everybody has this formula apparently. So.
Well, because I wonder, if how much or how little it takes to replicate this serum. Like if Captain America fought a Nazi and that Nazi got some Captain America like skin follicles under his knuckles before he was killed, and then a scientist swoops in and takes a sample, can they replicate the serum from that? I don't know.
Missing the real way that this gets passed. It's
I mean, I think the way
transmitted.
the way it's hinted at is it's not just replicating the formula; it's finding the right person. Because as Dr. Erskine said in the first Avenger, what matters is what's inside the person who's being subjected to the serum, and he has to be a good man, and that's what Steve Rogers was. I think Alexei was a good man, but he's also a very insecure man too.
Goes up a little bit.
And they even played at that in the Falcon Winter Soldier about how the super serum just makes you more
of what you are.
What you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So Lexi probably was insecure, and so he's got superpowers, but now he's even more insecure.
Yeah.
And
Explains all the bad humor too.
I mean, the other thing
Yeah.
too is if the Russians wanted to use it, especially during that time frame, I guess gosh, it would have been better if this was a period piece during the Cold War, but this is the mid '90s.
I disagree, and we'll talk
all
about
right,
that later.
well, let me explain. Because I was thinking about this, and Alexei had the super soldier serum, or this, let's just call it the serum. Alexei had that in a Russian environment, whereas Steve Rogers was a man out of time. And this happened in World War II, when during America, when America was going into World War II against Nazis. Okay, so I think it's a yes. I think Alexei was a good man, albeit insecure, but he also had these kind of like Russian micromanagers, and I think it prevented him from becoming what he saw Captain America was embraced as. And that's why he has this kind of like insecurity and kind of like somewhat rivalry, but almost like this envy towards what Steve Rogers became, and I found that kind of interesting.
This sounds
Now,
like Rocky
to follow up on
IV.
that,
Simple.
does Steve Rogers acknowledge Red Guardian?
I don't know if he even knows, at least in
Does he even know
MCU.
that, or it's just in his head, because he's so fixated on this the entire runtime.
Right.
And it's a very redundant joke. It's fun the first couple of times, and then you're like, okay, there's this rivalry, and it's there. We know, but at the same time, is this a one-sided competition, or is it this internationally known contest for best super soldier?
I think it's one-sided.
That's where it gets kind of fuzzy. The film, if there had been a longer version, one of my complaints about Black Widow is I think this was one of the Marvel films that could have benefited from being 2.5 to 3 hours long instead of the condensed 2, because there's a lot of story and a lot of ideas that are kind of thrown out there that don't get really explored. Because according to the continuity of, aside from Marvel Comics, which Seju is popping in here, he's got a quote, which, the first World War II era Red Guardian actually fought on the same side as Captain America against Nazis.
Sense, yeah.
So is that to say that Alexei was not the first, and perhaps he was wearing a mantle, like we found out that Captain America, subsequent to Steve Rogers being frozen, there were other caps? Or, how did the comics versus the MCU treat this? Because Captain America was sort of, and I haven't seen the original, First Avenger in a while, but he wasn't fighting for that long before, between getting the super soldier serum and getting frozen. It's not like in the comics where he had sort of a decades long, or, at least a few years of fighting against the Nazis before he got frozen. So there wouldn't have almost been time for him to meet up with the Red Men. I keep calling it the Red Guardian. And I feel like we would have found out about that in that movie, or there would have been some allusion to it. This almost seems like if Alexei was frozen since 1995, if Steve Rogers was brought back in the 2000s, he would have only known Captain America from the legends from the 40s.
Right.
So it almost doesn't line up that he would even have a case to say that they knew each other.
And I think that's one of the reasons why he's so excited, because when he got the serum, he only knew one other person who got the serum, and that was Steve Rogers, who turned into Captain America, who was a legend, who fought against the Nazis and was with the Allies. So, there's this kind of like huge iconic image to Alexei of Captain America, and the only person that he's 1 degree away from is Natasha, and so that's why he's asking all these questions, and it's really annoying to her because of the hurt that she has from her past, and all she sees him talking about is himself and Captain America, and it's like hurt upon more hurt,
It's almost like he's been unfrozen from time, because he's been in the slammer for 20 years and has no real idea what's going on. And he may have assumed that if Steve Rogers was awakened and given kind of a rundown of the history of the world, Mel Brooks style, then he maybe would have assumed that the Red Guardian would have come up in that history. So Steve Rogers would be thinking about the Red Guardian even if they've never met. Like, oh, is this guy still out there? Is he a threat? But that's totally not the case. It is kind of a twisted, weird continuity. I feel like the movie is trying to have its cake and eat it too. I mean, especially in the treatment of Alexei as a character. In the beginning of the film, he's pretty much a straight, agent, undercover dad character, but there's no sense that he's the kind of doofusy goofball that we get in 80% of the rest of the movie. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, mostly because of David Harbour's performance, and I think the writing is pretty solid of that character, throughout the film, even though it does change tonally. But again, it would have been nice if they had, explored that, like what happened to him. Was he always a doofus, but he was just really good at playing that bit of cover? Yeah. And then when he doesn't have a mission, he just kind of reverts back. It's kind of like what we hear about actors, is like once they're not performing a role, they're just kind of like, oh, who am I?
I admit I could take or leave it, because this movie's called Black Widow and not Red Guardian. Like, I'll take more of Natasha's background. Like that, going back to where we started on this with the opening sequence, like the opening credits montage of things, I'd like to see a hell of a lot more of that than one Nirvana song's worth of stuff. That's the dark, juicy stuff that makes Black Widow, or at least pre-hero. And that would have been a whole lot more compelling than Captain American Imitator in Red.
I'm all with you. When it opened with that period piece, I'm like, oh sweet, we're going deep, and we're going way back, and we're starting from when her a kid, and then we're going to see her go into the academy, and where we got all these glimpses and explored a little bit, bits and pieces, piecemeal over the last 10 years, the first 3 phases. We're going to actually dive into that, see how she actually reacted to this and what's going on, and then we just get this one skit, and then we fast forward, and then you're just like, oh, and then they don't really.
I'm still a hero, guys.
They don't really add more to her story outside of make her even less of a hero. Going, you really want me to cheer now for a kid killer? Really? Okay, she's not dead, but give me a break. That was a cheap redemption arc.
Agreed.
Out for that.
Well, okay,
yeah, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say I agree with that, because you start on this incredible opening where I didn't even recognize David Harbour without the dude. Yeah, he looks good without it. Like, honestly, hell yeah. And then like. I just after they do the dark opening where I'm like, oh, this is a different kind of Marvel movie. Okay. They go back to the funny humor, silly stuff. Yeah. I'm fine with, but they do it to a degree where you feel like you could see the Disney execs coming in and be like, oh, no, this is too dark.
Whoa. Funny. Put all that to a Nirvana song and chop it up, guys.
We'll let you put that in, but you have to tone it down a bit. And at a certain point, I just felt like, all right, now I'm just watching a comedy, which I gotta admit, David Harbour like nailed that Russian accent. He was hilarious. He was great. He kind of played great at this sort of like sloppy, I'm trying to get in my suit and I'm fat now, sort of like angle. But like, oh man, I was so disappointed that they didn't really go somewhere else.
And we should have known that it's Disney. We knew they weren't going to go there. And I mean,
to add on to that, Don.
Go ahead.
With after that really dark montage, I went with a good friend of mine who Marvel and were brought together through kind of myself, and I introduced them to that, and that really just strengthened our bond. So bringing them along with me, I was like, this is going to be it. This is going to be a great way to see you again. And halfway through, I leaned over to them. I was like, man, I am so sorry for this. Like I should have thought better. And they're like, no, it's fine. I like it. I'm like, okay, but like afterwards, you can tell me the truth if you didn't. And, they go, I like how this is setting David Harbour up for his Stranger Things role. He's killing 2 birds with 1 stone by being in this really frosty looking gulag and this really rugged, very transformative character where you kind of see a reflection of Hopper in him too, where he's taking care of these 2 girls and he still considers them as his girls, even though they're adults. And as a young woman with my dad, he still considers my sister and I 2 young girls. And I was really looking forward to that sisterly bonding between Yelena and Natasha as an older sibling, with a relationship somewhat like theirs, where when we were younger, we used to tussle a lot, we used to get into fights a lot. and it's kind of mellowed out and grown. And that was fun, but I don't think it had the emotional impact as it did if it were just a something with the two of them compared to this broader span of this family aspect and trying to bring in the mother, and she's also a widow. Like, what is that? Why are you also a widow? Why is everyone a widow? Why does the Red Room stay relevant? You know, that was my number one thing with that. But I do think it's kind of funny how they're like, this could be just David Harbour. You take him from that Stranger Things teaser and you throw him in a Disney movie and you just totally backtrack on your tone 100%. Multi-million-dollar picture. There you go.
Yeah. Nailed it.
You definitely did. And that's the whole thing is the scope of this, I'm like, why did they have to make it such a big scope, since where this fits in between Civil War and Infinity War? Why did you have to? I would have rather had it to where the Red Room was functioning, but it was still a smaller, shadowy group to where they didn't have 50 agents all over the world. They had these dozen agents, and this is something that he's been kind of building on, but it's just some seedy underground thing where, he's got minions and stuff, but it's contained within this. It's not, we have 50 million Black Widows all over the world. You didn't have that, and by doing a smaller scope, you could get that sibling thing, which because Florence Pugh, I loved her character in this more than Black Widow. I didn't care about Black Widow. I wanted to see more of her because she was a fascinating character, and the way she's played and everything about her, like I said in my review, I liked her in this role compared to everybody else in this movie. Within the context of the movie, I enjoyed her role quite a bit in this.
So did you watch Fighting with My Family?
What is a regular actor? What is a regular actor?
I'll guess
what is that?
I thought Midsummer was a pretty lousy movie, but she was really good in it.
Meryl Streep.
Hey, don't knock Meryl Streep. No,
right. I was saying she's one of the best actors.
That's true. Okay. Why did the villain's lair have to be Cloud City?
I was going to say, why did the Red Room have to be floating?
Much,
That was true.
Why did the Red Room have to be floating? I wish that we didn't have some floating thing that was exploding and falling in,
I know, it was so
down.
Terrible at the end of Winter Soldier that everyone hated that movie.
Exactly. Or Suicide Squad or whatever. It's just like, oh, come on. I was thinking about
the floating layer, the new sky beam.
It would have been great if Red Room was
the floating layer.
It would have been great if Red Room was like an island or underground or something.
That's
I
pictured Dr. Evil
or hiding inside of Macy's or something. It's like
Well, I think they did a good job of establishing why it had to be this floating city, because they had gone underground. They needed something where they could move and yet be pretty much anywhere on the globe and yet be undetected.
How long was the Hydra bunker that they find in Winter Soldier been actually hidden, though? You can't tell me they couldn't have had a secret hideout somewhere that's off the radar.
But then again, they didn't find the Hydra. They didn't find the Hydra bunker because Hydra was Shield.
Well, yeah.
How much
Russian
assassination money can make that thing? Come on.
Well, it wasn't just Russian assassination money. They were using that to gain political influence. I mean, you saw that goes back to the origin of how Natasha came to be involved in S.H.I.E.L.D.
That would be a great plot. That didn't happen.
No kidding.
That was it. That was in there.
We're all strung along to be like,
if you told me that's what we would have got in Black Widow, I would have been so much more open-minded.
Yeah. It was more about world building and connecting than it was about exploring Black Widow. It's funny. Like, of all the performances of the movie, I thought Scarlett Johansson was the flattest, and it wasn't her fault. It was because the script had these very you had these characters with personality, and then she's there, and I'm like, I do the right thing. I'm a hero, yay! But at the same time, as Annie was saying, there's a marketability to it. You have David Harbour, who's in Stranger Things. You got to sell that, so you're going to put him in this, especially when he was in Hellboy and he called movies that Marvel stuff. And You put him in that, people go, oh, that's pretty cool. He's in that. You put Rachel Weisz in that. She won a few Oscars. I don't know how that gets butts and seats, but maybe it does. You put her in that. You have Americans doing Russian accents. I was like, why didn't they just get Russians?
Yeah.
Because
that
they're
would have
actors.
been way cooler.
Are you a regular actor just like Florence Pugh?
That's right.
I want a regular Russian actor like Florence Pugh.
Sajula wants a superhero movie with regular actors.
Yeah.
Where do I sign?
Yeah.
Well, he also predicts, and I think correctly, Elon Musk will come out with floating cities for tourists soon.
But will he come out with the plot armor that our characters have within this?
Oh, there's
All right, let's
the word
talk about
there.
that.
Plot armor, yeah.
Yeah, plot armor.
Go on.
You have magic with
Plot
Marvel.
armor.
Plot armor. You have the Force with Star Wars. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm watching this going, I'm all for a superhero film and they're the superhero. I get it. There's going to be some plot armor. But when you have a helicopter being shot up by a 30 cal or 50 cal, and there's no smoke from the engine even.
You talking about the prison breakout?
Yeah, the prison breakout. I'm like sitting here and then she just puts it on autopilot while it's getting riddled with bullets.
Car crash with no injuries, same
Whip
thing.
out the missile launcher and explode the tower. It's like,
You are the same
Okay.
person who's defending and loved F9, right, Mark?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, no. Here,
Wait a
here,
minute. Say that again much
Oh.
slower.
here's where I'm at with that though. This film by
When they went to
itself.
space in the car,
Yes, I love
that
that.
F9.
Yes, that F9.
They
because
did that.
It's a hard F.
oh yeah, they.
Okay,
Well,
now I
here-
gotta see it.
First off, Fast and Furious. Thanks for outing me, Ian. First off, Fast and Furious is my guilty pleasure. There's a specific context with those films. You don't go in believing anything. Okay, by itself, I really loved Black Widow by itself. Okay, when I ignore the bits that where it's tried to connect, especially at the beginning, that when it tried to, connect everything back to and remind us, hey, this is a Marvel film. There's actually, I think, a really solid film here, and I enjoyed that part of it. I had to disconnect myself saying this is a standalone superhero film, and with the ridiculousness, I enjoyed it. When you work it into, well, it's part of the MCU, it's just like Rogue One. With Rogue One, with them getting the plans. If you think about that within the context of Star Wars with the tacked on end bad CGI part, that film I have problems with. If you think of it as a standalone story, like a book that came out with that's set in that universe, I'm all in. And that's what I took Black Widow is, because otherwise, when you work those other elements in, you're just like, really? And the fact that we know what happens to her later on, there's no tension with her. I had more tension with her characters. Yeah, the other characters around her. That's why, in all honesty,
it's funny how no everyone makes it.
Yeah, yeah. And still, everyone made it. Didn't even get hit by shrapnel. I was hoping somebody would have a chunk of blade or something fall down on top of them.
A skin knee at this point. Something.
Rachel Weisz's character was injured, and so was Alexei.
Define injured.
Well, they were injured, but they sure didn't. But Black Widow literally had a hole in her shoulder from the blade that was brought into her shoulder from the grapple that was pulled out, and she seemed completely unfazed by the fact.
More plot armor.
You don't even have the arm like being sore and Taskmaster going after that
cellular
wound,
injury. A wrestler can do it better.
Talking about that hatchet in Dreykov's office?
Yeah.
Didn't that go into her backpack thing that held her?
No, it went into her shoulder, because on her shoulder armor at the end, you see a hole in her shoulder armor right here, and she got pulled back.
Wait, you're wondering why she didn't have an injury when the blade went into her shoulder armor?
No,
if it punctures the armor, it can still hit the skin. It depends on the puncture and the force.
Uniform.
How about when she took off her shirt? She had all these bruises on her back.
Physics or logic with Marvel.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we're getting. And we're kind of getting into the weeds on stuff that I don't know that. First of all, I'm sure, and you can go back to the first Iron Man film when Tony Stark is testing out one of the proto suits and he falls to Earth into the desert and lands before any of the protection. This is when he had the original part 1. That should have killed him.
Should have.
Yeah.
Yes,
Throughout the rest of
always.
these movies, there's plot armor all over these films.
Always.
So I feel like Black Widow is being unfairly attacked, and not just by this group, but there's almost like these weird expectations of like, this doesn't make any sense. This is too comic booky, whatever. And also, I feel like to pick up on what Mark was saying, and a bit on Don too.
Okay.
If this movie had come out, quote unquote, when it was supposed to,
That would
post
be nice.
Civil War,
Edge of my seat.
and we didn't have any idea that Natasha was going to die at the end of Endgame, would you have had this specific problem with it?
Not a chance.
Well,
Edge of my seat.
here's the
I might have called out the superhero-ness and some of the lazy things we're talking about, all in the weeds and all that, but I would at least be on the edge of my seat wondering where all this is going. But we know she's dead. We know Florence Pugh's coming to Hawkeye. The only question marks you got are David Harbour and Rachel Weisz, and you don't lose any of them, where I probably would have got to the end of the movie and go, oh, that was really fun for a bit, but then safe, because that's what they do lately. And especially if this followed Civil War, and I've had this debate with you, where that's a safe-ass movie too. So compared to where source materials go. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's risks and there's attempts to put some drama there, but it's still safe as can be from the violence, body count, and peril department. So for this movie if this movie had followed Civil War, I would be less disappointed than I am now, but I still probably would have found a thing or two to be like, yeah, you're still pulling punches here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, but with Hawkeye, right? Isn't it supposed to follow My Life as a Weapon, Matt Fraction 2016?
Good question.
Okay, I think
Well,
that's because of the current
loose-
roster right now.
Loosely.
I think that's supposed to be the influence.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping for Kate Bishop to catch up with Yelena or something at the end, so we can see that transition into the cinematic Young Avengers, have that tie straight into Hawkeye while carrying on Pugh's significance as the new quote-unquote Black Widow in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love Seinfeld as much as the next guy, right? I'm like, oh my god, it's Elaine, it's Val. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I want to be more. I love Hawkeye. That's my favorite run. So I wanted to be more excited about that.
Yeah.
And then I really feel like that stinger dropped the ball significantly.
I
We
think
wouldn't have got
because
this stinger if it came out when it came out.
it would really be hard for them to adapt, like 100% wholly adapt Fraction's Hawkeye, because like they've
What, he's not
established.
tough?
Yeah, well
He's not tough?
they established they established Barton in this MCU as a family man. He's got kids, and in Fractions in all of Marvel universe in the comics, like he's never been married, he's never had kids. So it's like I'm very curious as to how they're gonna go. That is Linda Cardellini still going to be in this Disney show? Or are they gonna how is that? I mean, in order for
killed
them
her
to,
once for the poor guy.
in order for them to follow, and it would be great, like in order for them to follow Fractions, basically it's Clint Barton kind of living in I think it's in the Bronx, in living on his own, trying to just kind of make ends meet, and he's being chased by these Adidas sweatsuit Russian goons, which are hilarious, and there's the pizza dog, and I think the pizza dog is definitely going to be in the show. And
Well, here's guys.
How is that going to work?
I have no idea what you're talking about. So what does this have to do with Black Widow?
Yeah.
So what it has to do with Black Widow is, it's going to be hard to tie in all that happens in the comics with Black Widow to what is happening in the MCU, or what did happen in the MCU, because she's dead. And there's a lot of missed opportunities with Natasha's character. I mean, the whole Frank Miller stuff with Daredevil would have been great to see on the screen. I mean, that would have been awesome. Yep. It's not going to happen. So, Yelena is a character that was in the comics. So now we have her. She could be, I think this whole thing with Val is just, I really don't think it's going to develop into much. Yes, she's kind of developing. She's kind of like a quasi Nick Fury, kind of developing this Thunderbolts type team. Okay, but where is that going to play out in its where is that going to flesh out? What movie? What are we building up to? We don't know. Yeah. At least at the end of what is it? The end of Iron Man, right? It was like I'm putting there's an Avengers initiative. Okay, Avengers initiative. We know that an Avengers movie is going to come. We don't know what Valve's doing, and the thing is, I don't know about Walker, but I do believe that Yelena is, smart. She's like a lethal weapon. She's really smart. She's going to figure out that Val is up to no good, and she's going to be once she realizes that Hawkeye did not kill Nat, she's going to be done with that whole thing. And I'm very curious though as to why Val thinks that Hawkeye is a target.
Well, that stinger made real little. It felt so tacked on. It almost felt as tacked on as the one after I think it was Incredible Spider-Man 1 or 2 where they basically put an X-Men trailer on the end as the end credits sequence. I forgot
Amazing
which one.
Spider-Man 2?
Or the Amazing Spider-Man. Sorry, not Incredible.
Or Garfield?
Garfield. It was Garfield.
Okay.
It was at the. I'm sorry. The Amazing Spider-Man. After I think 1, they were going to have the end credit sequence, and everybody waited, and all it was a trailer for the X-Men movies. I think it was Days of Future Past is what it was. It was a trailer for.
That one was good. Yeah, left it there.
And this stinger felt like that. Like, oh, we're gonna tack it on because everybody's expecting it, and we're gonna tie it into Hawkeye because you're right. It made no sense to me. I'm like, okay, you're giving this to the person who we've just established is actually kind of a good person once she's not mind controlled, and you're going to try to convince her that Hawkeye. And I'm like, you mean she doesn't know the actual story of why Natasha's dead? You at this point,
but how would she
and everything?
I don't know if she would though.
Wouldn't she pre-exist in the universe since
Exactly.
Right, that's the thing.
after Civil War?
Yeah, the end.
But here's the thing: how much
is 2016? Right, 2017,
right,
and we're doing 2025 with end of Endgame, right? If we do the 5-year jump and all that stuff like that, that's 8 years of I know my sister now, and we can be buddies and be tight. You can't tell me she doesn't know the whole thing.
Well, but you're talking about like what happened with Hawkeye and Natasha in terms
on
of
that planet. How would they know?
But how is that necessarily public information?
Recording from there or something.
Well,
but tightness of people. Someone would have told her by now. Probably even Clint. So,
right,
but we're assuming that Clint would have had any kind of relationship with Yelena at all. Like, how would they even necessarily know each other?
But he had a relationship with Black Widow,
2025 gap.
Wouldn't there be some sort of relationship between a former Avengers family member and Clint? Because in Age of Ultron, he brought his team to his farm, and how's that working? I don't know why that would be the other way around.
But Yelena goes off at the end of before the Black Widow credit sequence. She goes off with the surviving widows to do something. We don't know. We don't know if they contacted the Avengers, if they hooked up with them, if they tried to even get on the Avengers' radar. Would the Avengers or S.H.I.E.L.D. or anybody acknowledge them because they are a former cabal of elite assassins that were ostensibly their enemies for decades?
But hold on.
Stay tuned on Disney Plus.
Are they going to do this whole movie?
Give you the answers.
Are they going to do this whole movie of like, this is so great that we got our family back together and we should really stay together, but no, hold on, let me walk away at the end of this movie and never see you for 8 years. I call bullshit on it.
Well, that was weeks or months later, though.
Yeah, even still, we're talking. These are the holes that we're all laughing at, and they're all.
But
there.
I'm confused. I'm confused as far as you're saying walk away from which family?
Well, no, you're saying all right at the end of this Black Widow movie, which has to be in 2016, 2017, whatever we're talking about here, and Natasha goes to turn blonde and keep on being on the lam before Infinity War, and Pugh and her widow parents go out and likely go after the rest of the Red Room deprogramming mission thing. You can't tell me they don't, now that they're all back together and things are great between them, that they don't keep in touch for the next 8 years? Bullshit.
Can we kind of backtrack on that blonde statement? Who was the gentleman that was supplying Natasha?
Oh, they never give him a name, but I looked him up.
And the blonde hair dye and all of that good stuff. Because he seemed to be a huge part that just was never touched.
Right?
Just like
I would love to know more about how they came to be. Was he a love interest at one point? Was he a friend? Was he a former assassin? What's his story?
It's Rick Mason, right?
He says he's a contractor, right?
Yeah, he's a contractor. Well, not only that, but you would have thought with his connections and the way he handles things, he would have played integral part in them being on the lam, getting them what they needed. He would have showed up at some other point, this character or even mentioned. And I understand, you know, the whole thing with the where this film was made. But again, you know what would have been ideal for this film to come out after we first get Black Widow in Iron Man 2, was it that she showed up?
Yeah.
Well, she was a completely different character by this point.
No, I know, but still, is what I'm saying is that you could tailor the story a bit if you wanted to tell this story that I think would have more impact and less questions. Would have had her earlier, and soon after you introduce her, you give them this story, because then you make people want to know more. Yes, you'd have to tailor the script, cut out the connections, but still, I think it could be done. And I think you would have had a more impactful film that people would have cared about more. The problem is this is coming out now, and I mean, by itself, it's great, but in the grand scheme of the MCU, no one cares.
I'll see that and I'll raise you. Take it to the grand scheme of cinema. Like, this is also
Scorsese, let's slow down.
no, Scott Mendelson.
It's just a ride. No,
I can't take credit for this, but Scott Mendelson and Forbes is like, don't just say that this is too late for MCU. This is too late for film, because in the 6 years since this movie came out, we've had Red Sparrow, we've had Atomic Blonde, we've had Hannah. Like, this whole, you could even say Fury Road. The female spy badass has been done way better than this movie, you know.
Sure, but I think people are a little bit more invested in Scarlett
the MCU stuff. Yeah. I get all that.
Not just that.
There are a lot of people who want this. Yeah,
but we're talking about a missed opportunity that's been missed multiple times. Like,
well, and that's fine. I'm glad to see that Hollywood is going to start retiring the gangster movies, the space epics, the westerns. They're giving up because it's all been done before. I mean, what's the point?
Well, I mean,
the circle, it'll go back and then it'll be popular.
No. Like,
we're gonna do it in 25 years.
It's not that Black Widow movie can't follow Red Sparrow and Atomic Blonde, but you've got some tough acts to follow, and then you have Disney's restrictor plate NASCAR filtering of you're never going to go hard. And
but here's the thing: I think
you get this.
What are they going to do
this
with
week's
Blade?
sauce. They ain't going to do shit.
Yeah,
and
Blade.
This would be a
Because
cooking show.
they're coming out with the Blade movie, Annie.
Oh, good luck.
Blade.
More
Do you guys
hot
remember when Wesley Snipes wouldn't open his eyes, so they had to CG his eyes over them because he was beefing so hard with the director? I think about that like 3 times a day.
With
the
the first one, like
You can tell Ian thinks about that multiple times a day too.
When Wesley Snipes was Blade, or in Blade, or whatever that was, I don't know. I was still like
Blade.
4.
Wow, I just felt my arteries.
Good parents putting you in front of that movie.
Wesley was beefing so hard with the director that there's a scene, and it's a very specific scene, where he's laying on the ground and they ask him to open his eyes, and he's so adamantly stubborn and he won't do it. So they take CGI and
1998.
and they put the eyes over them and they open, and they're just like these awful grafted yellow contacts. I think about this like 3 to 4 times a day, and it's the funniest thing ever.
I'm trying to think of what scene that is.
I had forgotten about that story.
Man,
I gotta go back and look. I gotta watch that
there's
again.
a YouTube rabbit hole for all of us after this.
And we're
sure.
YouTube. That's. I mean, Wesley was known for not being the best guy to work with, but also, I think that director of the movie just stopped directing movies after The Extraordinary League of Gentlemen. Just disaster. I think like Sean Connery quit acting after that. So
he sure did.
Norrington was his name.
I saw that movie. I think he quit acting before it. But
have you seen The Avengers? The other Avengers.
Are you talking about the one in the 90s with
Uma Thurman and Ray Fiennes?
Thurman and Ralph Fiennes.
I think Sean Connery quit acting long.
Yeah, he took those paychecks.
The Avengers was long before League of Extraordinary Gentlemen came out. I mean, I think Don, I understand your criticism of this being not a hard enough movie, but I think Disney and Marvel pushed this about as far as they could go, given the audience they're trying to reach. That's because fair. I'm just gonna pull this out. We didn't do the high level opinions because I forgot at the beginning of the show, but I kind of know where you guys stand.
Yeah,
I loved Black Widow. This is one of my top Marvel movies.
Why can't he love that, Don? Why can't he love it?
Wow.
Just head and heart. I wish they connected for that guy.
Art is subjective.
My head and my heart are both, I understand I've heard about the third act problems. You know, I went into this having been immersed in all the media, all the questions and controversies going in.
Yeah.
And I'll be addressing all of those point by point in my review coming soon.
Okay.
But, you know, aside from the giant, you know, climactic explosions, you know, stuff falling through the air and the giant sky that, you know, people say this is just like the weaker version of Winter Soldier. There are a lot of parallels to Winter Soldier. But, you know, as I said at the beginning, if you're going to steal from the best, I think if you're going to criticize why is there a giant floating station, everything's falling around the heroes and they're not getting hurt, you go back and watch Winter Soldier and ask those same questions. But in terms of this film, what I loved is that I thought they explored, and not to the degree that they could have, which is why I think it needed to be longer and fill in some of those gaps. I think it really does do a good job of exploring not necessarily where Natasha had been, you know, the origin story. I don't need to see an entire movie or a half hour of her training in the Red Room, because I think, to your point, Don, we've got other movies we can watch with that. It doesn't matter if it's Scarlett Johansson doing those montage scenes and the brainwashing and stuff. A 3-minute song under a Nirvana cover just about cuts it. What I liked is we do see her throughout her career in S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avengers, and now post Avengers, before she knew she was gonna go back. And what this is all kind of done to our psychology. We get the global politics of a post-Soviet, you know, Russian government trying to maintain, you know, regain its stranglehold on the world with this kind of covert operation, and Dreykov, played by Ray Winstone, coming up with this cabal of brainwashable assassins. There's an evolution of the program. They started off with strict mind control, but they felt that wasn't secure enough, so they developed this, you know, the MacGuffin gas that could, you know, activate and deactivate people. And, you know, yeah, it's like, how did this stuff get out of the lab? And I think you can just look back in 2020 and say, well, that's not so far-fetched. But, you know, there's a lot of like really smart, deep, dark stuff going on in this movie. And one of the things I loved about it is this is the dark side of the more realistic and grounded side of the Marvel Universe. That third act where they've got, again, the costume Taskmaster, who I understand is not at all comics accurate, fighting the other guy in the ill-fitting superhero suit, and there's stuff exploding, and, you know, assassins and all this other stuff. They kind of have to throw that in there because that's the kind of movie they're making. But a lot of the stuff, the conversations that they have early on, the wonderful scene, I think, between Yelena and Alexei, where that ends with them, you know, singing American Pie to each other, you know, that gets to what the effects of these global power grabs have on the actual individual people who are swept up in this, many of whom didn't ask to be part of this. You can go back to that parallel in some of the superheroes that are running around Marvel Universe, whether it be a radioactive spider or a gamma ray accident. They have to come to grips with who they are as people in this crazy, mad world. And I think this is the reason this is one of my favorites, is it doesn't deal with mutants or aliens or any of that stuff. Is about people using this incredible technology to enact some very real world global politics.
Yeah, and this movie could have been a straight up James Bond movie. It had elements of a Bourne movie or a Bond movie. But what it does, what's in the beginning of a Bond movie, right? There's the intro action sequence. Here, this intro, you could call it an intro action sequence if you want, but I think there's a lot more poignancy in this intro than we expect from really any MCU movie, let alone a standalone movie, especially when we see them leaving their home in Ohio and going to that airport hangar, and we see those scenes of what Natasha is going to be missing from America. These scenes of like, baseball diamonds and you know, whatever, you know, other kids riding and being free. She's losing that freedom. And I don't know.
And it's over in 8 minutes.
Yeah, fine. But you're establishing it. And to me, that was very interesting to me to see, like, okay, she did get a taste of America. It wasn't just all Red Room for her when she was a child. She had her taste of America. She missed out on that. She enjoyed it. And I think her younger sister was even more of a victim because she was pulled out of that even younger and then thrown into the Red Room. So I could see just from that intro how an adult Natasha would have a lot more guilt, a lot more regret, and hurt and frustration and grief from even just what her sister went through, and she couldn't even really be there for her sister, you know? And so that was, to me, I think they said a lot in not so much dialogue and not so much, you know, screen time. And just from what the screenwriters and what director Kate Shortland was showing us, it was more of a show, don't tell. And I really appreciated that.
Well, and then the other, to pick up on that, you know, we've talked a little bit about the bot's assassination of Dreykov, which ended up in his young daughter being blown up instead of him. You know, there's some logistical problems with that, just because they were spying on him, and you see the daughter walk basically into the office up to his desk where he was ostensibly sitting, and yet he doesn't show up later with any scarring, and he doesn't get blown to smithereens. No. I don't know what was going on behind that wall, if he had some kind of a secret, like, you know, Inspector Gadget chair that like zipped him down to a safe house or something. But what was interesting was that Natasha said, if I heard this correctly, that was her last act of initiation before joining S.H.I.E.L.D. So what she essentially found, she was a former spy who had broken this programming of the Red Room. She wanted to do the right thing, so she hooks up with, you know, the ultimate kind of American good guy outfit of S.H.I.E.L.D. And what did they ask her to do? To use her deadly powers to kill people. And not just, you know, go and extract information, because that's what she wasn't just trained as an assassin, as we saw in Iron Man 2. She was trained as an infiltration, you know, I was going to say an infiltration unit. She's not a Terminator, but she kind of is, a flesh and blood Terminator. So they could have said, okay, you know, go back to your contacts, give us all the data dumps you need. We could send a drone to take out Dreykov. You don't need to prove yourself by putting by planting a bomb in someone's office, who again is not just going to blow him up, but ostensibly secretaries and janitors, unless we want to say that they're all kind of Hydra agents, where everybody down to the person who like takes out the garbage is evil. But again, these are some interesting questions that this movie asks us to consider amidst all the action spectacle. Is what was Natasha? She was trying to hook up with this outfit. What was S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to make her do? And was this when S.H.I.E.L.D. was run by Hydra? So is it Hydra who's asking her to commit evil acts against Dreykov, who is another enemy of theirs on the global scale?
Those are all interesting points, none of which I felt were examined. And I know we're like, oh, well, we don't want another origin story, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, yeah, but how does Black Widow go from like, I blew up this little girl to, oh, I feel bad, I'm going to join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Like, I want to.
Well, she had already
noble person.
She was already indoctrinated, so to speak, into wanting to join S.H.I.E.L.D. She took on that mission. You know, she probably had understood that there could be collateral damage. She did feel bad because she wasn't expecting it. But you know, after it's over, she's already in. So, like, what's she gonna do?
It just felt like a quick flashback, and then I'm like, wait, I want to know more about how she changed, because it just felt like, oh, we just got to make her the good guy, you know, and then we'll throw in the other Marvel stuff. Like, amazing stuff explored, but not explored enough.
And again, I think this is why this movie would have benefited from a longer running time. But I also don't want to discount that this could be also explored in future TV shows or future movies.
For sure.
Because this is the beginning of
Dave Filoni.
I was just going to ask you. I was going to pose this to the other five, or other four. Would you think that this would be a more suiting plotline or premise as a multi-episode limited series than it would a 2.5-hour runtime film that has such limitations to it, where there's not enough to explore? You can't do another series, you can't do another season, and you are really gate-kept on what is possible.
I would like to see like maybe 3 episodes. If you had like 6 episodes and you stretched it out where you have like the filler in between, I would be like, but like make it like a mini series.
I would love to see something between Iron Man 2 and Avengers where she hooks up with this guy named Matt Murdock. That would be cool.
I want to see what happened in Budapest.
Black Widow again. I love it, guys.
I want to see how her and Hulk kind of like got like a crush on each other and all that.
That'd be nice too.
Well, first of all, Don, it's Budapest. Get it right.
Budapest. Correct. Yeah. It didn't make my lessons for the review, but it should have. You're right.
Again, as much as I brought up the criticism, I still gave it 4 stubs in my review because a standalone movie I was very entertained. I got what I wanted out of it. I saw it in the theater. It looked great on the screen. There were great visuals going on, though I wish the action scenes would have been directed a little more because there's a lot of choreography and things going on. But
good choreography.
But the way it's directed, you don't get to appreciate the amount of work that was actually put in with some of those fight scenes. And even the action scenes are amazing. I just wish I would have got to see more of. Also, Taskmaster, I'm going to say, I know it's changed from the comic, and at the end, it's kind of a get out of bad person jail free card for Disney. But in all honesty, Taskmaster felt like a legit villain out of the MCU and one of the few legit villains we've had for a while, who's a bad person who feels like a threat and could actually hurt our heroes. Because in all honesty, a number of the villains we've gotten outside of like Thanos and that kind of felt a little jokey. I mean, we got Loki, but he's in the gray area in all honesty. But Taskmaster, for me, at least for a while, for what we've gotten for a while, really felt like just a legit threat to our heroes. And you saw Taskmaster go, I could see him taking on the Avengers easy. I could buy into this guy just kicking the snot out of so many of the Avengers, no matter who they were. You know, I'm like, I liked the Taskmaster in this.
Although I will say, and I love Taskmaster as a character, and I understand what they did with the adapting her into the live action realm, and it's understandable how they adapted that into the story. Ian and I watched this in Dolby, and I have to say I rolled my eyes, not the first time, but the next couple of times where we see Taskmaster enter a scene. And it was like her feet landing.
I know,
like,
right? Yeah,
I'm like, okay.
She's 600 pounds.
It's not like she's wearing an Iron Man outfit or anything. It's like, come on. You know, it's like
really good boot soles.
You know,
and all the jokes about the poses.
I understand that initial. I like the jokes about the poses, but that's another thing. All that initial scene on the bridge, I get it. That's the introduction to her to Nat. You know, and it's like, whoa. But like this whole gush. It's like Godzilla is entering the room. It's like, come on.
No, I did find a chuckle with that. But I mean, as far as the way they handled the character as a threat, I like. But no, the sound, I'm like, she's wearing 100 tons.
And I absolutely love Olga Kurylenko. When I saw her in the opening credits, I'm like, oh. And then of course, when I have to say, her reveal was pretty predictable, pretty obvious, but I didn't care. I liked it. But I love Olga Kurylenko. I wish there would have been a little bit more to her in that third act, you know. But I love the one line she had as she was lying there in the rubble. I think she was just asking. I think she was just asking if Dreykov was gone. Is he gone? You know, and that's cool because that just shows that there was this internal fight, you know, all along. You know, that although he was controlling her and programming her, you know, she wound up hating him, you know, as much as probably all the other girls and women. So I have a question about, like, the fight scenes were great. I'm just wondering, like, why do you guys think that when Nat and Yelena reunite, why are they fighting?
Because it looks cool.
Because it looks cool when they switch to the guns. It's like, hey, it's that.
I mean, it's a brutally I mean, it's a brutal fight. It's a brutal fight. You know, but I'm like, why is this happening? Because they haven't seen each other in so long. It's like there's not even a whole lot of dialogue, and eventually they're both just like exhausted, and they're like, all right, let's just okay, I'm fine. You know,
what I gathered was that because we don't. And I don't remember if this is discussed in any other movies or if this is a scene that still has to be filled in. But Nat at some point left the Red Room,
right,
and hooked up with S.H.I.E.L.D. So
and Avengers,
but Yelena, and the Avengers, Yelena didn't. So to whenever they separated last, Nat knew that Yelena was one of the Red Room widows, and Yelena probably knew that Nat was a traitor. So when they see each other, they're not necessarily going to sit down and have a cup of coffee. It's kind of like when Obi-Wan and Darth Vader meet on the Death Star. They're not like, so anything different? Are you still, are we cool? No, they draw
I mean,
their lightsabers and they go
okay.
for it.
Yeah, but at least with Obi-Wan and Vader, there's a build up to that. We know that there's there's established bad guy, evil, wise wizard.
Right, but here's the thing. Again, with this movie, I understand your criticisms with it, but I feel like this is a film that is asking the audience to do a little bit of thinking and keeping up. They're not handing you all the information. Sure. I deduced that relationship within the first couple of seconds, them meeting and they're fighting. I'm like, oh yeah, because she's an Avenger and she's still, well, she is ostensibly, in Nat's point of view, still part of the Red Room and Black Widow. Nat doesn't know that her programming has been broken because she probably doesn't think that that's possible outside of whatever led her to break free. And even that was probably a fluke because we don't know that other people have broken out of the Red Room.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I just feel like,
Swiss cheese, man.
I just felt like, especially with that opening where she was very protective of Yelena, I thought maybe she wouldn't go in, guns blazing and just, I could see Yelena being a lot more on the offense. But as far as Nat, who and when she was a young girl on that tarmac, we saw her like very protective of Yelena. I thought that she would be like more like, look, I'm coming in with no weapons. Let's talk. I don't know.
It's something that could have been solved with one additional scene. Yeah. And that could have played out one of two ways. Either sometime in the Red Room training, they have a falling out. Either Yelena discovers that Nat has broken her programming and she's like, hurt because her sister has left her again. Or we just have one scene of, because we get about 2 minutes of Yelena as a deadly Black Widow before she accidentally is exposed to that gas. Have something showing the ruthlessness of her as a killer. Because it's part of it is Florence Pugh, going into this movie, we know from the trailers that she and Black Widow are going to team up.
Right.
So it's very easy to see her automatically as the good guy. So with only a couple of minutes, and you almost forget that she's not good right from the beginning. Yeah. But if you see her like snapping necks or bombing an orphanage or something like that because you're instructed to, then you could see, okay, yeah, this is the kind of person who's going to, hold a grudge or kill an Avenger on sight.
It goes along with what you were saying. This film could actually, and I don't believe I'm saying this either because some of the Marvel later films were butt numbing, but you could have used an extra few minutes for that. Or what I'm thinking of, they did it so that you could see she could go toe to toe with Black Widow because we know Black Widow already. And the whole scene is really to show that she can go toe to toe with Black Widow and she's equivalent. They're at least on the same level. That scene easily could have been avoided and still made sense considering where Black Widow is now in this film, to where they do the gun exchange thing. You're like, okay, they're as quick as one another. And then Black Widow goes, whoa, and puts her hands up and down. Now you've got Elena, who's now good person, who's going to at least take a step and maybe not beat the crap out of each other. And you have maybe a little dialogue, and you could have played it out that way. And I think that's where a few of the panel here are talking about, is that really could have played out a different way. Or you get the scene to where there's a mistrust between them, or some, just a little blurb or something to where she's going to see her sister, but I don't know my sister's going to be, happy to see me, or some toss off line to where, they have some kind of grudge against each other. So when they're beating the snot out of each other, it has a little more weight outside of
some context.
Right. Because Black Widow's a good person now in this scene. So why wouldn't she have, instead of, I'm going to just trade blows with you,
Well, she is a good person now, but she's also, a trained killer and someone who's gone up against enemies that she's, she doesn't have a contextual conversation with everyone she fights. Well, sometimes she just understands that someone who's coming at you with a gun and trying to kick the crap out of you,
Right.
Again,
it's your sister. If there's ever a place to have a contextual conversation,
look, if I could
that
pick
woman,
my sister up, I would.
Me too, my brother. I hear you.
But again, that's what I'm getting to. It's kind of like Taskmaster.
We don't got to talk about it. It's just going to happen.
Right.
That's true.
Annie, I want to get back to something that you had asked earlier. I think this is key. It's something we've talked about on some of the the weekly live streams going back to WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier and even through Loki and I think Black Widow is a bit of a victim of this. And I think it's one of the reasons we're having this conversation about this. I don't know if we'd be having this discussion if it came out when it was supposed to last year, which is that Marvel is doing such a great job of giving us these long form kind of character explorations within their comics universe that, Black Widow seems kind of quaint and rushed, through this lens. And I think, it would be great to see. I would love to see, I'm biased here because I really dug this movie, but I'd like to see something that really gets into those, dark corners and answers some of these questions, fills in the gaps. I think you're exactly right in asking that question.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a Black Widow Daredevil, series and, put it in, like I said, in between Iron Man 2 and Avengers. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I overall gave the movie a good rating. I gave it a 3 out of 4 Guinnesses that I use, and it was because in the end, it still was as standalone a satisfying, entertaining film. But you can't really divorce yourself from what Marvel has already done. We know about Ian can because he's smarter than me, but. I mean, I had trouble divorcing myself of it because I'm like, okay, well, I know Captain America and Iron Man are going to fight each other because Bucky killed his dad, and then the Avengers are going to be broken up. I know that, half the entire planet is going to disappear after the snap, and then you see this and you go, okay. But you're right. It seems quaint, and in between as a standalone film, it's okay. I like the fact that it didn't just do an origin story, but at the same time, I kind of wish it did. It just feels like the timing's a bit off, but overall, it was okay.
I really think we are getting her origin story here because we're getting people, these supporting characters. We're getting people who knew her before we did, and who basically, had this, fake family that she grew up with in Ohio and who experienced the Red Room just as much as she did. So in essence, this is kind of an origin story. It's just not beat by beat, shot by shot. It's just these are people who've experienced her past that we're just getting introduced to. And for me, I'm fine with great action sequences.
I think it's more of
not her origin story
for them instead of her.
Yeah,
right.
It's like it was talking more about everyone else but her. It's like, I went through this too. I'm sad, but
we're learning a lot more about her through them.
Like I said,
we're learning a lot more about her.
I still don't know why she's called the Black Widow.
No.
Why is she because she's the one that created them all?
She went to Ohio State.
It's a title like Black Panther.
Sure.
I think this movie is going to age well. In terms, I think once people get past the idea of the release date and where this fits into the Marvel cinematic release continuity, and just think of it as a Marvel film, because in terms of the timeline of the MCU, this thing slots in right after Captain America: Civil War. I think 5-10 years from now, when people who are coming of age at this point, they're going to be experiencing these things on streaming or rental or whatever. It's kind of like with Star Wars. Us old fogies think that the first Star Wars movie is 1977's A New Hope. It's actually the fourth movie. When you look at kids from the younger generations coming up, they're going to look at these like, oh no, episode 1 came out in 1999. It's a bit confusing, but it makes sense because that's the first part of a 9-part story. Right. This is going to be chapter
about Skywalker.
Well, yes.
Talk about Skywalker.
I knew you were good people. You're one of us. But no, I think, I think that this is going to be seen as movie. I don't know what the numbers are, but it'll be like movie 16 of 22 or whatever in the first 3 phases. And I think as a kickoff to phase 4, is that what we're looking at? Is this phase 4 part 1, or is this
supposedly?
It's all part of it.
So Disney is Marvel are counting the TV shows as part of Phase 4. That's where we're at now.
Yes, they are.
I think they're taking their time. I think they're using
bring in everything that's happened into Multiverse of Madness. So that will account for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That will account for Loki, and then how Loki ends next week. And then that will count for WandaVision as we see Wanda transform into full Scarlet Witch.
Now
Loki's
is
a weird one
I
because
love
Loki's
Loki so much.
Oh, love
Yeah,
Loki.
I
Yeah.
love Loki
but Loki's
so
a weird
much.
one to put.
Yeah.
Loki's a weird one to put in phase 4 because
12-year-old me has been wanting this for the last 11 years.
Right.
Don't start, John.
No. But Loki's going to be
I'm sorry,
weird for
11-year-old me.
no. But Loki's going to be weird for a phase 4 movie because it takes place in 2012. Like this is accidental
Well-
squeak out of Avengers.
It's kind of timeless.
It's
Yeah, like
I don't-
we're gonna make jumps. I get it, but
time works differently.
it's
there,
not
yeah.
gonna.
Yeah.
This
It-
is
I mean,
the
it's-
easiest thing to watch after Endgame.
I just
Only
think
because
it's
of the
fascinating that
time.
they're including the TV series, and because when I think of the Marvel phases, I have just been thinking of them as quote unquote cinema, as the movies.
Here's
And
the
I
other-
don't have a problem with that. I just wanted to get my facts straight as far as
Yeah.
what canon phase 4 is.
and-
And
Yeah,
Kevin
here's the
Feige
other way-
they're not planning on big movies. They're just starting with
Yeah.
TV. And
Well-
I'm wondering if the What If series is like they're just test driving the
Having fun.
multiverse to see if people like
They're
it.
test
And I'm
driving
like,
animation.
okay, let's ditch that because
The What If series
Yeah.
is exactly what the comics used to be. It's like, what if
Right,
this
yeah.
happened?
Yeah, sidebar fun for
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The way
I-
this movie ages better, or like the way you're talking, Ian, the way this movie ages better is if Florence Pugh blows up. You know, like
Yeah.
if she becomes this.
I
great
don't want
character-
anything to happen to her.
No,
What are you
no,
talking
like-
about?
Oh, there's so much blowing up in the movie.
Yeah,
We
but
don't need that
if-
anymore.
If we
Come
get to
on.
go back,
Blown up in Cloud City.
but if she becomes a bigger deal than she already is, because she's awesome and I love her, and she's taking the torch that's been passed to her, which is fantastic. But if she keeps blowing up and doing great, that's the reason people are going to come back to this movie. with great
you talking
eyes.
about the
It's
actor or Yelena?
Both.
Well, and you know, people
We're going
have
to come back and
referred
go,
to-
dang, that's where I saw Florence Pugh, because there's a whole segment of people that aren't going to watch Midsummer. There's a
That
whole
regular
segment of people that
actor
aren't
who
gonna
was in Midsummer.
Right.
I love Midsummer.
I know. But we all can do Little Women. And,
Darn, Mark, StreamYard's telling me I can only have 5 people on at the same time. So
Right. But for the hardcore MCU fanboys, this is probably their first dip into Florence Pugh.
Right.
So
I'm sorry
If-
to hear.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, but if that's what people are going to come back and enjoy, is like, this is where we got to meet her. Like we're not coming back for Scarlet, we're coming back for Florence.
Oh no,
Really
those
watch
MCU fanboys are going to go back for Scarlet.
2 words.
Flash
Come
instead of
on.
the movie, but yeah.
Hey, Sujiwa, you forgot to add the other element for that. You've got to, if you're going to do family,
no,
you gotta
Mark,
have-
no.
Now we're talking.
Toretto and
Bring it
his
out.
family gotta
Yeah.
come along because
Mhm.
you need them. No, I'm
All the
joking,
needs.
but no,
Lady
I
Macbeth.
I think what you're going to see in here, and I'm glad you brought it up, Ian, with Star Wars, because I am old school. That was the first movie I saw. Yes, I'm very old, 2.5 years old. I saw New Hope in the theater. It was my first movie I ever saw in the theater. Yeah, there you go. My arteries are now hardening. But
Take another drink of the wine. It's got antioxidants.
yeah, take
Thanks,
another
guys,
drink of
for
the wine.
making me feel younger than I actually am.
No, it's fine. But what I was saying is the MCU is gonna, the way they're doing it, even though it's longer term, is going to be similar to the way the Star Wars films are. You have a whole generation that was introduced to Iron Man, Thor, and that, and have grown up over the 10 years now and become the main consuming demographic now, and are fans of the Phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 4, 5, and 6. You're right. Florence Pugh moving into the mantle of the Black Widow. We're thinking Young Avengers. They're going to grow up with that. That's going to probably be their first experience with the MCU. So that group now in the generation are going to move with these new characters and then go back to the old phases maybe and say, oh, okay, because the way they have this, if you see the way it's written, yeah, you kind of have to see Endgame, but you don't necessarily, because they fill in enough of the gaps to where if you're being introduced to the MCU for the first time, you don't necessarily need to see those. You could start with these shows and you move into the next films and the other shows, and then they could go back. So you're going to have another generation, kind of like Star Wars, where depending on the generation, their favorites are us, the first original trilogy, because that's what was as kids growing up. Because in all honesty, folks, in the end of the day, these are meant to be for younger adult kid movies.
Correct.
So you have another generation who started their films in the theater as the prequels. They love the prequels. Great. There's another generation, and I know some people hate them. I enjoy them quite a bit, but the sequel trilogy, that was their first Star Wars experience, going to the midnight movies, the big crowds, people dressing up for those movies. So that's their favorite films. And I think you're going to have that with the MCU. I think we're just in a transitional phase right now, and it's a little weird. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just to say that's where you're saying Black Widow is going to age better. I think it will, more so than maybe some others, because it's like a Star Wars story type of film, to where you don't necessarily need to know the others in order to follow what's going on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they're like, what the MCU is doing is a bit like what Dave Filoni has done with Star Wars, where people weren't too thrilled with the prequels, but if you watch like the Clone Wars and Rebels and Bad Batch, you're like, oh, now I care about the Clone Wars. I didn't think was possible. So like you can go into like the MCU, watch a television show, which Feige's basically saying we're just focusing on TV now. And now what was it that Dave sent us? $215 million that they made, but a lot of it wasn't even through theaters. Like it's like you're watching parts of a comic, reading a particular one you like watching a particular episode of Clone Wars. Like I showed a friend of mine the episode where they found Maul in the pit and whatever, and he's like, "Whoa, they do this!" I'm like, "Yeah, I told you it's not just a kid show," So they're gonna find stuff like that, and it's gonna bring people into this. So yeah, probably overall it'll fit in just as fine as everything else. I mean, when I saw Loki, it made me go watch Thor and Thor: The Dark World, which I didn't think
was underrated. Thor: The Dark World.
I'm starting to notice that. Yeah.
It was a good movie. It was just mythology based, not
very good.
And that's why people were turned off by it. I will die. I've gotten so many fights about but
I love Dark World.
I don't know if my face will ever recover from this
I don't
look.
get the hate. This seems all right.
They like it because but they don't like it because it's not Black Widow material where things are blowing up every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
True.
It's more about the mythology.
It's more exactly. For mythology works, such as myself, I'm all about it. I also will forever be in love with Tom Hiddleston. So I guess that's
well, there you go.
I love Tom Hiddleston.
That just means you have a pulse.
I love Tom Hiddleston.
My first ever premiere, and I forgot how he was.
I tell you, I would short circuit if we ever got Tom Hiddleston and our 10th Doctor, David Tennant.
Also in love with him.
I would have loved to see a movie with those two. And yeah, Tom Hiddleston could actually do a very good Doctor. I would love to see him in the role of Doctor Who. I think he could bring something to it. But anyway,
maybe we're getting the MCU version of that with Loki.
You might be.
So
yes,
I think that we're gonna end it here. Oh, what are you showing me? Is that
this is the Natasha I grew up with in the 80s? Yeah. With the short hair, and notice she's got the arrow through the shoulder done, and she's still fighting.
Yeah, she's so tough. Good for her. Yeah.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks, everyone. It's been a really fun discussion. I think there was a lot to talk about with this movie, and I'm glad we kept it. We didn't end up in a civil war, but divided opinions. We're all still friends at the end of the day.
We're in an infinity war.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm cutting it here, because we could talk forever about these movies and TV shows. But we will be talking more this coming week. That's right, folks out there can join us Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central, right back here. Earth's Mightiest Critics taking on this season, possibly series finale of Loki. Annie, what are you doing Wednesday night?
I want to be here.
Bring her in.
Right there.
Okay.
Yes, I want to be right there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Show up first, and you get that spot in the.
Why are you pointing to Mike all the time? You got your finger up his nose. Oh, okay.
We love each other.
And you.
Oh, that's beautiful. But also, so I will officially invite you, Annie, when I send out the invitation. One thing I want to end with Sujiwa here. This is from an earlier comment, but I didn't post it. Movie sounds interesting, even with regular actor Florence Pugh.
God damn it!
You really need to see more movies.
Yeah. We'll stream it when it becomes far less.
You really need to see more movies,
Sajua. Is that just going to be like her logo? Like, instead of Academy Award winner, it'll be average actor.
We're going to call him limited knowledge director.
No. But no, I I do want to see on the next Florence Pugh movie, you know, when she said instead of like and Florence Pugh, it'll say and regular actor Florence Pugh. Not even on the marketing, just in the movie itself. But no,
you may
so
know
yeah.
her, but you don't really know her because she's a regular actor.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Good
right.
luck trying to figure out what she's from. I know I've seen her somewhere, but maybe
Yeah,
that's not it.
England.
Yeah, that's the new term for character actor. It's just
Sajua,
regular-
your homework
Regular
starts with
Regular
Sajua.
actor.
Find someone from
Yeah.
England or
Your homework
Australia.
starts
and
with
they'll
Lady
nail
Macbeth.
Whatever accent you need.
That's a good place to start.
Okay, and I would also recommend. I don't know if everyone here on the panel has seen it, but the wrestling comedy from a few years ago, Fighting with My Family.
Yeah,
Very
very
good.
good. Yeah.
That was
Very
really
good.
good, and she was really good, and I was
Mm-hmm.
totally surprised. There's actually a director's cut on the Blu-ray, which I haven't watched yet, so I still gotta check that out. But anyway, thank you all for hanging out and going a little bit long here, folks. Check out Black Widow in theaters or on Disney Plus, and as Sajua mentioned, he doesn't want to pay $30 for it, so you could wait. I think it's coming out in September. Like it'll just be available for Disney Plus subscribers or something. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Just don't mention anything about her relationship with Zach.
Yeah,
Braff.
there we go.
That's
There
been
we
one
go,
of
David.
that's been one of the ugly pieces of publicity coming out around this movie.
Ugh,
But anyway, I think we'll leave it here. Earth's Mightiest Critics once more around the room. We've got Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck from Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, Don Shanahan of Everything, Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree, and Annie Banks of Chuck Load of Comics, our newest member. So thank you for joining us. I hope we weren't too rambunctious, and I guess we're okay because you're coming back Wednesday.
Whether you want me here or not, I'm just gonna use the
She's gonna show up anyway.
I'm gonna show up.
got the link.
It's just going to be like a plastic doll there.
You're gonna stream bomb us. I love it. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. For those out there watching this live, give us a thumbs up in the last couple of minutes if you wouldn't mind. If you liked the content, if you loved it or didn't like it, leave us a comment. If there's anything you want us to talk about on the Loki stream on Wednesday, drop us a comment there in the chat. And also, if you're watching this later, please like and subscribe to all of us fine folks here. The information will be down in the description. And with that, I'm going to give us a good old-fashioned Stan Lee style Excelsior as we end the broadcast.
Excelsior!
Too late again.